In the early days of the Iraq War, as chaos swallowed Baghdad, a rumor slithered through the dust-choked streets, a whisper carried by soldiers and looters alike. It was not a rumor of hidden gold or political secrets, but of something far stranger, an unassuming collection of cuneiform tablets unearthed within the boundaries of the central zoo. Imagine a place where the ancient dead and captive beasts shared the same patch of earth, where the roar of lions mixed with the crumbling echo of a 6,000-year-old silence. The Baghdad Zoo had been shattered by the conflict, its cages torn open, its keepers scattered, leaving behind a landscape of escaped animals and exposed archaeology. No official excavation had been planned there. No university led the dig. The tablets simply surfaced through the raw wound of modern warfare. Those first fragments were said to be different, their symbols not just temple records or harvest counts, but something that felt profoundly and dangerously out of place. They spoke according to the fragmented stories of knowledge that should not have existed in a world lit only by oil lamps and starlight. The whispers called them the Baghdad Zoo Tablets, a name that carried the surreal irony of forbidden wisdom clawing its way to the surface in a house of beasts. You could almost picture a lone U.S. soldier, flashlight in hand, crouching over the ancient cuneiform as the night wind carried the cries of a displaced tiger. In that moment, history's locked vault creaked open just a crack, and something ancient flickered back into the awareness of a world already on fire. The phrase that began to circulate among certain circles was electric. Forbidden, Sumerian knowledge, secrets older than Babylon, now scattered across the black market. To understand the shockwave these tablets caused, you must first descend into the foundations of Mesopotamia itself, where civilization first learned to write. Yet here were whispers of detailed biological processes, of genetic manipulation, of a cosmic origin for kingship that bit deep into modern theology and science alike. As the conflict-bred looting accelerated, many of Iraq's museums were ransacked, their catalogs burned, and whatever the zoo yielded merged into a flood of illicit artifacts. The exact number of tablets recovered or stolen from that ruined zoo remains a ghostly variable. Some say 5 fragments, others speak of a chest of 43. One translated fragment, widely disputed but often cited in shadowy corners of academia, purportedly described the fusion of flesh and divine essence. We tell ourselves that time reveals all things, but as you trace the vanished path of these tablets, you feel only the thickening fog of erasure. The physical evidence is painfully fragile. A few blurry digital photographs, a single video clip showing a helmeted figure holding a tablet near a demolished monkey enclosure. The clay in the images is the color of dried blood, its edges jagged, and its surface so densely carved that it seems to writhe under the camera's uneven light. What the Sumerians normally pressed into clay were hymns to Inanna, accounts of barley shipments, and the heroic boasts of kings. The Baghdad Zoo Tablets, however, allegedly contained a creation narrative that inverted the known myth of Enki and Ninhursag, reframing gods not as creators, but as bioengineers. Where conventional archaeology found fertile crescent agriculture and ziggurat theology, these rumors unearthed a labyrinth of antediluvian science. The first coherent theory, born in encrypted forums and whisper networks, claimed the tablets were the lost library of an exiled priest-king who had stolen the god's own blueprints. Another darker hypothesis suggests the tablets were never meant for human eyes. They were a sealed warning, a tomb for knowledge that had already consumed one civilization. Where rational attempts to explain the anomaly fell short, the labyrinth deepened, inviting the sort of speculation that keeps researchers awake in the mercury vapor glow of late-night study. Some pointed to the Sumerian myth of Adapa, the sage who was granted wisdom but denied immortality, and saw in the Zoo Tablets a manual for seizing the forbidden gift. Could the cryptic symbols detail the precise methods by which ancient kings extended their reigns to impossible lengths, a pre-biblical account of life extension alchemy? The scientific bafflement is absolute because the material itself is missing. We are chasing shadow geometries cast by a fire that might have been extinguished deliberately. Yet every trail leads to a dead end. Every supposed translation dissolves under scrutiny, and every photograph seems to pixelate just enough to obscure the critical glyph. The labyrinth tightens with the suggestion that a modern agency, glimpsing the power in those spiraling forms, intercepted and classified the fragments into deep storage anonymity. The soil of the Baghdad Zoo, thus, became an unlisted archaeological site, its secrets vacuumed up and scattered to the winds of covert trade. Some whisper of a private collector in Zurich, others of a sealed military archive in the Nevada desert. The tablets exist now only as a rumor of a rumor. The very absence of the evidence has become the central piece of evidence. A silence so loud it drowns out the mundane explanations of forgery or mass hallucination. Where archaeology faltered, local legend began to fill the silence, and the zookeeper's own lore seeped into the narrative like groundwater into a grave. Older keepers spoke, long before the invasion, of their animals behaving strangely in one particular quadrant of the zoo, staring at a blank patch of earth with ancestral dread. They had refused to build new enclosures there, sensing something that predated Islam, something that even the pre-Ba'athist monarchy had fenced off and ignored. The human element of this mystery is etched in the faces of those who claim to have glimpsed the tablets and were never the same again. You can track the psychological toll through fragmented interviews, a linguist who stopped speaking publicly, a soldier who became obsessed with ancient alien theory. The obsession warps time. A young researcher in Munich spent 7 years cross-referencing every known cuneiform sign against the blurred photographs, only to vanish from academic record. Her final, unhinged paper, rejected by every peer-reviewed journal, claimed the tablets contained a fifth-dimensional grammar that could only be understood through ritualistic recitation. There is a comfort in believing history is a solved puzzle until you stand at the edge of this silence and feel the vertigo of a narrative with no bottom. The rational mind insists on forgery, citing the lucrative market for looted artifacts and the fertile ground of chaos that spawns intricate fakes. A master forger, versed in Sumerian, could have seeded the zoo with doctored tablets to exploit the chaos. And perhaps the entirety of the legend is a postmodern art project. But the forgery theory struggles to explain the sheer dread the images evoke, or why so many who handled the fragments reported identical, specific nightmares of humming towers. The clockwork of theoretical explanations ticks forward. A lost antediluvian repository, a Sumerian tech sect, a psychological warfare experiment, or a genuine message from the deep past. Each tick of the clock of inquiry only drives us further from certainty, because the original clocks, the tablets themselves, have been swallowed by this century's darkest sand. We are left staring at the fog of war, both literal and metaphorical, that allowed an impossible knowledge to surface for a breath and then dissolve. The abyss that gazes back is the realization that our past might be riddled with such suppressors, places where forbidden truth was buried under zoos, highways, and cities. What if the Sumerians knew of the double helix not through divine gift, but through an inheritance from an even older, obliterated source? The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to our archival crises, and we are forced to consider that the universe's real joke is allowing knowledge to be born only to be forgotten. The human obsession then morphs into a question, not of what the tablets said, but why we are so desperate to know it against all warnings. We are a species that digs up graves and calls it enlightenment, and the Baghdad Zoo Tablets represent the ultimate forbidden fruit in a garden already ash. Some researchers theorize that the zoo location was not random. Perhaps it was a hidden threshold, a place where the boundary between the wild and the civilized was ritually maintained. The Sumerians revered the man-beast hybrids, the guardians of gateways. Were these tablets buried to sanctify a portal that the modern zoo unknowingly replaced? A more chilling whisper holds that the knowledge was suppressed not by modern agencies, but by a living oral tradition, a silent order that has guarded this secret since Sargon. They moved in the chaos of the looting, these guardians, and reclaimed the tablets before they could be digitized, preserving the world from a truth it cannot metabolize. Thus, the silence is not an accident of war, but a deliberate, almost holy erasure, a second burial of knowledge too heavy for the human soul. The toll on those who seek truth is a modern tragedy. They are left clutching at photographs of photographs, digital specters of a revelation that never fully manifested. Some have driven across the Syrian border on rumor alone. Others have spent decades learning dead languages only to conclude that the tablets were a psychological mirror. The forbidden knowledge, in their final, exhausted analysis, might simply be the realization that there were always multiple apocalypses, and the flood was not of water, but of data. But the zookeepers who survived note that the same patch of earth remains unbuilt upon, and the animals still refuse to sleep there, turning their backs to some palpable memory. The human need to unearth is matched only by the human impulse to hide. We are a paradox of curiosity and dread, and these tablets are our purest mirror. In the case of the Baghdad Zoo Tablets, the hand belonged to a world on fire, a city being reborn through agony, and the knowledge that slipped through was a final, ironic casualty. The memory of the tablets now lives as a ghost in the machine, archived in obscure corners of the deep web, its glyphs blurring into noise with each resolution loss. To look upon the weathered stone of the zoo's old enclosures is to feel the weight of a civilization that buried its own brain to save its heart. The broken relics of the zoo, the rusted feeding troughs and cracked tiles, stand as silent witnesses to the exact spot where history's forbidden chapter opened and shut. The artifacts of the legend are not behind museum glass. They are scattered in the magnetic fields of corrupted hard drives and the fading memories of traumatized witnesses. If this journey into the unknown has captured your mind, remain with us as we continue to unlock the silent chapters of history, one fragment at a time, always questioning. The abyss of time swallows most things, but occasionally, as in the chaos of a shattered zoo, it spits back a bone of truth too sharp to be swallowed again. We are like those caged beasts freed into a war zone, bewildered by the debris of a structure we once trusted and sensing a danger older than the bombs. What does it say about our species that our greatest revelations arrive during our darkest moments and are immediately consumed by the same flames that illuminated them? The fog of time rolls back over the Baghdad Zoo, and the tigers that survived have new offspring who know nothing of Sumer but still avoid the same patch of earth. It is a genetic memory, perhaps, or an atmospheric trace of a frequency set off by the tablet's discovery, a hum that will not cease until the truth is either fully revealed or fully denied. You might find yourself, on a sleepless night, wondering if the forbidden knowledge was simply the instructions for undoing the genetic locks that keep us human. And you might then stare at your own hands, turning them in the blue light of your screen, and feel the faint, terrifying tug of an inheritance you cannot name. The Baghdad Zoo Tablets, as legend, as hoax, or as vanished miracle, serve to remind us that history is not a book but a palimpsest, scraped clean by power and fear. Our entire civilization is built on a foundation of forgetting, and the true miracle is that any truth at all manages to slip through the censors of centuries. The question that lingers long after the investigation exhausts every lead is whether humanity would even want the knowledge if it were offered again on a silver platter. Perhaps the guardians who may have re-hidden the tablets did so not out of tyranny, but out of a terrible compassion for our fragile, still evolving species. The Sumerians believed that the mess, the divine powers, could be stolen and misused, and that the gods would unleash monsters to retrieve them. In the modern metaphor, the monsters were war and chaos, and the maze were genetic and cosmic truths we are still not ready to wield without self-destruction. You can hear the echo of their retrieval in the silence of the zoo at dusk, a sound that is not a sound, but a pressure on the eardrum of the psyche. The clockwork of human mortality ticks alongside the constant pressure of the stars, and the tablets represent the wrench in that clockwork, a missing gear of cosmic aggrandizement. The philosophical anchor in this saga is the question of what knowledge is for. The Sumerians were the first to write, and their first writings were ledgers, not prophecies. To then evolve to forbidden biogenesis requires a leap that defies the archaeological record, leaving us with either a profound gap in our history or a profound mystery of transmission. The weight of this gap presses down on every scholarly attempt to dismiss the zoo tablets as mere fiction. The fiction stings because it fills a vacuum we all feel. In the end, the tablets function as a cipher for our own existential dread, a story we tell to externalize the forbidden knowledge that whispers from our own unexplored DNA. And so the silence endures, not as an answer, but as the profoundest question, leaving you alone at the edge of the enclosure, staring into a dirt patch where ancient gods once whispered their most dangerous secrets.